Have you ever found yourself lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, wide awake, heart pounding, and mind racing through every possible worst-case scenario? That job interview tomorrow, that thing you said 3 days ago, the message you haven't gotten a reply to, the silent fear that something, somehow, might go wrong. You're not alone. We've all been there, that strange mental spiral where our thoughts get louder, darker, and heavier the longer we lie still. And somehow it feels like worrying is doing something, like it's helping us prepare, stay ahead, stay safe. But what if it's not? What if I told you that worry isn't protection? It's just a habit, a deeply conditioned reflex of a mind that hasn't yet learned how to sit still and trust. You see, Buddhism has a radically gentle perspective on this. It doesn't shame us for worrying. It doesn't ask us to deny fear or pretend we're okay. Instead, it invites us to look deeply with clarity and compassion. Because from the lens of mindfulness, worry is not something we need, it's something we've learned. And like anything we've learned, it can also be unlearned. Let me ask you something. How much of your life has been shaped not by what happened, but by what you were afraid might happen? How many moments have you missed because you were busy preparing for a future that never came? How often has your mind pulled you away from the beauty, the stillness, the presence of now? I know that might sound a little philosophical, but think about it. All of life only ever happens right here, in the present moment. The past, it's memory. The future, it's imagination. But worry? Worry lives in that space between. It feeds off of uncertainty. It pretends to help, while quietly draining our energy, our focus, our joy. And the hardest part? We've been taught to see it as responsible. We think, if I worry, it means I care, it means I'm prepared. But Buddhism flips that upside down. It says, no, worry doesn't mean you're prepared. It means you are not present. So today I want to offer you something different. Not a quick fix, not a 5-step hack, but a shift in how you see your thoughts and your power over them. In this video, we'll walk through 9 simple but powerful perspectives grounded in Buddhist wisdom that can help us loosen our grip on worry and return to something more truthful, more peaceful. We're not talking about ignoring reality or pretending everything is perfect. We're talking about waking up, really waking up, to where your life is actually happening. Here, now, in this breath. You don't need to be a monk. You don't need to sit in silence for hours. You just need to be willing to look inward and listen. So if your mind has ever felt like a storm you couldn't stop, if your heart's been heavy with what ifs, if you've ever wondered, is it possible to live with less anxiety, less tension, less fear? Then stay with me, because what you're about to discover might just change the way you move through the world. Let's begin. Let's be honest. How often do we find ourselves trying to predict the future? We replay that upcoming meeting in our minds. We imagine 10 different things that could go wrong. We mentally prepare for conversations that haven't even happened yet, and we call it being responsible. We say, I'm just thinking ahead. But what's really going on is that our mind is trying to protect us from uncertainty. And in doing so, it drags us away from the only place where life actually happens, the present moment. You see, worry has a very specific rhythm. It begins with a thought, sometimes small, sometimes loud. Then that thought starts spinning into what ifs. What if I fail? What if they leave? What if something bad happens? Before long, we're not just thinking anymore. We're reacting. Our body gets tense, our chest tightens, our breath shortens, and all of that because of something that hasn't even happened. So here's the real question. Is it the world that's making us anxious? Or is it how our mind has learned to respond to the unknown? According to Buddhist wisdom, worry isn't something that life does to us. It's something our mind creates when it hasn't yet been trained to stay grounded. And that's not criticism, it's actually good news. Because if the problem isn't out there, if worry is something we've learned, then it's also something we can unlearn. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're walking through a quiet park. The sun is setting, it's peaceful. And suddenly a thought pops in. Did I lock the front door? Now you're no longer in the park. You're standing in your living room in your mind, frantically checking locks. You're imagining break-ins. You're scrolling through your mental to-do list, all while the birds are singing and the breeze is soft around you. That's what worry does. It takes you out of what's real and drops you into what's imagined. The Buddha often spoke about this. He taught that suffering doesn't always come from the situation itself. It comes from our resistance to it. In other words, it's not the event, it's the mental movie we create around it. Worry, in this sense, is a kind of self-generated suffering. We project fear into a future that hasn't arrived, and then we start reacting to that fear as if it's already here. But here's a shift I invite you to consider. What if worry isn't a sign of awareness, but a sign of disconnection? Because the truth is, the more we try to predict every outcome, the more we miss what's unfolding right in front of us. Think about it. When was the last time you were fully present, truly here, with no inner rush, no spinning thoughts? It's rare, isn't it? Our culture rewards speed, planning, performance, but very rarely are we taught how to be still, how to breathe, how to sit with not knowing. But this stillness, this grounded awareness, is what Buddhist practice is all about. And no, you don't need to renounce the world or live in silence to find it. You just need to learn how to notice your thoughts instead of becoming them. Because that's the power of a trained mind. It doesn't mean you never worry. It means you notice when worry shows up and you choose to respond instead of automatically react. You get to say, here's worry again, and then breathe and come back to your feet on the floor, back to the warmth in your hands, back to what's actually happening, not what your mind is predicting. This is a practice, and yes, it takes time. But every moment you remember, every time you return to now, you're training your mind gently, patiently to trust the present. You're breaking the cycle. So next time you catch yourself spinning stories about the future, pause, breathe, and ask, is this real or just a habit I've learned? Because once you can see that, you're no longer trapped inside it. You've stepped into awareness, and that awareness is where your freedom begins. Let's talk about something many of us silently cling to: control. We like to believe that if we plan enough, predict enough, prepare enough, we'll be safe. We set schedules, and we make backup plans. We obsess over the details. And sometimes it works. Things go our way. We feel in charge, competent, secure. But then life happens. A loved one gets sick. A job suddenly ends. A global crisis turns everything upside down. And just like that, the illusion shatters. Here's the truth. Control was never real. Not in the way we think. Not in the way that gives us guarantees. Now, don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with being organized or making thoughtful choices. But there's a big difference between taking wise action and trying to grip reality so tightly that we exhaust ourselves. Buddhism teaches that the world is constantly changing. This isn't an abstract idea. It's a core truth of existence. In Pali, it's called anicca, impermanence. Everything arises, exists for a time, and fades. Seasons change. Relationships evolve. Bodies age. Emotions pass. Even the happiest moment eventually dissolves. And even the darkest night eventually turns to dawn. So why do we resist this natural rhythm? Why do we cling so hard? Because somewhere deep down, we've confused certainty with safety. We believe, if I can just control the outcome, I won't get hurt. But that belief creates a constant undercurrent of fear, because control is fragile, and we know it. Let me share a metaphor with you. Imagine you're holding a handful of sand. If you cup your hands gently, the sand stays in place. But if you squeeze it tightly, trying to hold it all, it slips through your fingers. Life is like that. The more we try to force it, the more we lose touch with it. The tighter we grip, the more anxiety grows. Worry is often born from this exact place, our fear of losing control. We imagine future problems and try to outthink them, like chess players planning 100 moves ahead. But in doing so, we stop living. We stop breathing. We stop trusting. And here's where impermanence becomes a gift, not a threat. Because once we truly understand that nothing is permanent, not joy, not pain, not even this moment, we start to relax our grip. We begin to see that peace doesn't come from locking life into place. It comes from learning to move with it, not against it. Think of a surfer. They don't try to control the ocean. They study the wave, stay balanced, and ride what comes. They fall sometimes, but they get back up. They don't fear the water. They respect its power and flow with it. That's what we're invited to do, to stop managing every twist and turn, to start believing that one perfect plan will save us, to start thinking we can prevent all disappointment if we just try harder. Let me ask you, when was the last time you felt truly at peace? Was it during a moment of perfect control? Or was it when you let go, even just for a second, and trusted life to hold you? I've heard people say, if I don't control everything, things will fall apart. But the truth is, trying to control everything is what's pulling us apart. Because control doesn't give us peace. Trust does. Trust in the ebb and flow. Trust in your own capacity to meet whatever comes. Trust that even if the path changes, you'll find your footing again. And no, that doesn't mean we stop caring. It means we stop clinging. Because clinging creates tension. Tension breeds fear. Fear fuels worry. And worry, as we've seen, pulls us out of the present and into an imagined storm. So what can we do? We can start by noticing. Notice when your jaw tightens. Notice when your shoulders lift. Notice the moment your thoughts begin to spiral into what if territory. And then pause. Take one deep breath. Feel your feet on the ground. Remind yourself, I don't need to control everything. I just need to meet this moment. Because this moment is real. This breath is real. And from here, we can respond with clarity, not panic. That's the beauty of the Buddhist path. It doesn't promise certainty. It offers something much deeper: presence, peace, and the ability to ride life's waves with grace. So the next time worry whispers, you're not safe unless you're in control, you can whisper back, no, I'm safe because I've learned to trust what I can't control. And in that letting go song, you'll begin to feel something new, not fear, but freedom. Let's take a closer look at something we rarely question: our attachments. We all hold on to things: people we love, jobs we've worked hard for, plans that feel safe, versions of ourselves we think we should be. And at first glance, that doesn't seem like a bad thing. Caring deeply, having dreams, wanting stability, it's part of being human. But the real question is, what happens when we cling too tightly? Here's the pattern most of us never realize we're stuck in. The more we attach, the more we fear losing. And the more we fear losing, the more we worry. It's like holding a beautiful glass vase in your hands. You love it. You don't want to break it. So you grip it tighter and tighter until your hands ache and you're too afraid to move. That's what attachment does. Buddhism calls this upadana, clinging, grasping, the habit of tightening our fists around what we want to keep. But life isn't meant to be held like that, because the tighter we hold, the more fragile everything feels. We begin to live not from love, but from fear. Let me ask you, have you ever been afraid of losing someone so much that you stopped enjoying your time with them? Or felt so desperate to keep a plan on track that you couldn't see new opportunities right in front of you? That's the silent damage of attachment. It narrows our vision. It makes our peace conditional. It turns love into possession. And worst of all, it fuels worry like nothing else. Here's something powerful the Buddha taught. Suffering isn't caused by the things themselves, but by our attachment to how we think they should be. You can love someone and still lose them. You can plan everything and still be surprised. You can do your best and still face uncertainty. And if your happiness depends on everything going your way, then peace becomes a moving target, something you're always chasing but never catching. So how do we let go of this clinging without becoming cold or careless? That's the key. Buddhism doesn't ask us to stop caring. It invites us to care without attachment, to love freely, to plan wisely, to dream big, but hold gently. Imagine holding a butterfly. If you squeeze, you hurt it. If you panic, it flies away. But if you stay open and calm, it might just rest in your hands for a while. That's how we're meant to hold life. Here's another image the Buddha used: maybe one of the most striking. He spoke of two arrows. The first arrow is pain. Something in life goes wrong. It hurts. That's inevitable. That's part of being alive. But the second arrow, that's the one we shoot ourselves. It's the mental story, the fear, the replaying, the tightening, and that is optional. Attachment fires that second arrow again and again. We fear losing money, so we obsess. We fear change, so we resist. We fear rejection, so we shrink. And the irony? The very thing we're afraid to lose, we often lose touch with anyway, because we were too busy worrying. But here's the shift. Freedom doesn't come from having more. It comes from holding less pressure, less fear, less control over what others do or how things unfold. It comes from trusting that love doesn't need chains, that value doesn't come from permanence, that you can be deeply engaged with life and still let it breathe. So the next time you notice worry creeping in, ask yourself, what am I gripping right now? What outcome am I so afraid of losing that I'm missing the moment I'm in? Pause. Loosen your hold just a little. Breathe into that space and see what softens, because something beautiful happens when we release that grip. Love becomes lighter, work becomes more creative, time feels more spacious, and the mind, so often tangled in tension, begins to rest. This isn't about giving up. It's about showing up with open hands instead of closed fists. It's about saying, I care, I'll do my part, but I won't lose myself in fear of what might slip away. That's where peace begins, not in the guarantee of holding on, but in the courage to let go. Let's pause for a moment and consider this. What if your thoughts aren't telling you the truth? What if they're just stories, narratives your mind creates, sometimes helpful, sometimes misleading? We don't often question our thoughts. They rise up, speak in our own voice, and we believe them without hesitation. Something bad will happen. I'm not good enough. They must be upset with me. And just like that, we're pulled into a world that might not even exist. This is the trap of the untrained mind. Buddhism calls it samsara, the endless cycle of suffering fueled by craving, aversion, and ignorance. And one of the biggest sources of that suffering? Mistaking thoughts for facts. Let's break it down. Your mind is the storyteller. Every single day, it spins thousands of thoughts about the past, about the future, about what could go wrong, about what people might think, and about who you are or aren't. It's like a nonstop movie reel, and you're not just watching it, you're starring in it, feeling emotions as if every scene is real, reacting as if every line is true. But here's the truth. A thought is just a thought. It's not a prophecy. It's not a command. It's not reality. It's simply a mental event, like a cloud passing through the sky. Sometimes light and gentle, sometimes dark and heavy, but always passing. Think about this example. You're waiting for someone to text you back. An hour goes by, then two. Your mind starts whispering, they're ignoring me. I must have done something wrong. They don't care about me anymore. And suddenly your heart races. You feel anxious, even hurt. But nothing has actually happened. No new information, just thoughts, and your body reacting to them like they're fact. That's how powerful the mind can be. It can turn imagination into experience. And that's also how worry is born. We don't choose to worry, it sneaks in. One thought leads to another, and another. Before we know it, we're living in a mental version of the future that hasn't happened, or reliving a version of the past we can't change. The problem isn't the thoughts themselves, the problem is identifying with them. We think, if my mind says I'm in danger, I must be. But the mind is often just echoing fear from the past. It's reacting to discomfort, not always reality. In Buddhism, there's a practice called vipassana, clear seeing. It invites us to observe the mind, not obey it, to watch thoughts rise and fall without being swept away, to realize, this thought is not me, it's just passing through. Here's the shift. Instead of living inside the story, you become the observer of the story. Instead of being the storm, you become the sky. So how do we do that? Start by slowing down. When a stressful thought shows up, pause. Label it gently. That's a thought, not a fact, not a threat, just a thought. Then breathe. Come back to your body, back to this moment. Because in this moment, 99% of the time, you're okay, you're safe, you're breathing, and nothing bad is actually happening. This is where freedom begins, not by forcing your thoughts to go away, but by seeing them clearly, without getting pulled in. The Buddha compared the mind to a wild elephant, strong, restless, powerful, but without training, it causes chaos. Through mindfulness, meditation, and ethical living, we learn to tame the elephant, not by chaining it down, but by guiding it gently, consistently, back to awareness. And here's what's beautiful. The more you do this, the more spacious your inner world becomes. There's less panic, less spiraling, more clarity, more calm. You don't have to react to every thought. You don't have to believe every fear. You don't have to build a future around worst-case scenarios. Because most of the time, the fear lives in the mind, not in the world. Let me leave you with a question. When was the last time your mind told you a scary story and it didn't come true? How much peace could you have kept if you had simply paused and asked, is this real or is this just a thought? That's the power of awareness. That's the beginning of liberation. And that's the heart of the Buddhist path, not to silence the mind, but to see through it, to stop confusing thoughts with truth, to find freedom in stillness, and to come home again and again to the only place where life really happens, right here, now. Let's try something together. Right now, wherever you are, pause. Take one slow, deep breath. Inhale, exhale. Feel that? That breath, that single quiet moment, is the present, and it's always been here. It never left, but most of the time, we do. Our bodies are sitting, walking, working, but our minds, they're scattered, replaying what happened yesterday, worrying about tomorrow, imagining, planning, regretting, fearing. It's like living with one foot in the past, the other in the future, while the present slips through our fingers like sand. Buddhism teaches something simple, but deeply powerful. Suffering arises when we leave the now, when we resist this moment, when we wish it were different, when we trade what is for what might be. And anxiety, is the red flag that says you've left the present. You're living in a future that hasn't happened. You're battling what-if scenarios that may never come true. So how do we come back? How do we stop this endless time travel of the mind? The answer is mindfulness, not a buzzword, not a trend, but a way of living with full presence. Now, let's be clear. Mindfulness doesn't mean sitting cross-legged in silence for 20 minutes a day. It's not about escaping your life, it's about fully entering it. Mindfulness means when you eat, you taste. When you walk, you feel your feet on the ground. When you listen, you're really listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak. You're fully here, not drifting, not judging, just noticing gently what's happening now. And something amazing happens when we live this way. The noise in our minds, it softens. The pressure in our chest, it eases. We stop building stories about what could go wrong. We stop fueling fear with imagination. We return to reality. Here's something most people don't realize. When you're present, you actually make better choices. You see things more clearly. You respond instead of react. You breathe instead of panic. You become grounded, not because of everything is perfect, but because you are present with it. That gap between thought and action, that moment of space, that's your power. That's where peace begins. So many people think the goal is to control life, to fix it, to predict it, to hold it all together. But control is an illusion. Life was never meant to be managed like a spreadsheet. It was meant to be lived, moment by moment. That's why mindfulness is so radical, because it doesn't ask us to change the world. It asks us to show up for it, fully. Let me share a little practice that changed everything for me. Whenever I feel my mind racing, whether I'm overwhelmed, distracted, or anxious, I do one thing. I place my hand on my heart and say quietly, I'm here. I'm safe. I'm enough. It sounds simple, but it brings me back. It reminds me that right here, nothing is missing. Right now, I'm okay. And you can do the same. You can come back again and again. No guilt, no shame, no rush, just return to the breath, to the body, to the now. Because the truth is, this moment is the only place happiness can live, not in the regrets of yesterday, not in the worries of tomorrow, but in the quiet space of now. Let me ask you, how many joyful moments have you missed because you were too busy thinking about the next one? How many peaceful mornings turned anxious because your mind woke up in the future? You deserve better than that. You deserve to live here, to fully taste your coffee, to really hear your child's laughter, to walk under the sky and feel present for it. That's not just mindfulness. That's freedom. So next time your thoughts start spinning, next time your mind tries to drag you away from now, take a breath, feel your feet, name one thing you can see, one sound you can hear, one feeling in your body, and remind yourself, this is real, this is enough, this is home. Mindfulness isn't about perfection, it's about presence, and presence is the doorway to peace. Letting go, just two words, yet they carry so much weight. And let's be honest, it sounds simple, but feels nearly impossible. Because somewhere deep inside, we've been taught that holding on keeps us safe, that if we stop worrying, we'll lose control, that if we loosen our grip, everything will fall apart. So we cling to plans, to people, to outcomes. We hold tight, believing that control equals protection. But here's the truth Buddhism gently reveals. The tighter we hold, the more we suffer. Control doesn't bring peace, it brings exhaustion. Think about it. How many nights have you stayed up replaying a conversation, trying to fix what's already passed? How many times have you played out worst-case scenarios in your head, just in case? How much of your life has been spent trying to steer a ship it were never meant to captain? No one teaches us this when we're growing up. But the reality is, life was never meant to be controlled. It was meant to be experienced, fully, openly, one moment at a time. Let's take a look at nature. A tree doesn't worry about losing its leaves. A river doesn't resist when the current changes. A bird doesn't panic if the wind shifts. There's a quiet intelligence in nature, a deep trust in the unfolding of life. And here's the beautiful reminder. We are not separate from that flow. We are nature. We are part of that same rhythm. When we fight the flow, we suffer. When we resist, we contract. But when we trust, we open. Maybe you felt it before, a moment when everything was uncertain, but somehow you were calm. Maybe it was during a big life change. Maybe it was when you finally said, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll face it when it comes. That's trust. That's the art of letting go. And strangely, it's in those moments, not when we grip harder, but when we surrender, that we feel the most alive. But to get there, we have to unlearn some deeply rooted habits. We have to stop believing that worrying is a form of love, that planning every detail makes us responsible, that being in control makes us strong. The Buddha never taught us to run from life. He taught us to meet it exactly as it is, with all its chaos, its beauty, its uncertainty. He taught us that everything is impermanent, anicca, that no moment, no feeling, no circumstance lasts forever. And when we truly understand that, not just in theory, but in our bones, something shifts. We stop clinging so tightly. We begin to hold life with open hands. We stop trying to force peace, and instead, we create space for it. Now let's clarify something important. Letting go is not giving up. It's not laziness. It's not apathy. Letting go is wisdom in action. It says, I will do my best, but I won't sacrifice my inner peace trying to control what I cannot. It's knowing that life is much bigger than you. And instead of being scared by that, you're humbled, relieved, freed, because when you stop playing manager of the universe, you get to become a participant in it. You get to dance with life instead of battling it. And that's where the deepest freedom lives, in releasing the illusion of control, not just once in a flash of clarity, but again and again, every day, every breath, every time fear knocks on your door whispering, you're not safe unless you hold on. And you choose to whisper back, no, I choose to trust instead. Trust in the unfolding. Trust that what's meant for you will find you. Trust that when the moment comes, you'll know what to do. And if you don't, trust that not knowing is also part of the path. Because this kind of trust isn't passive, it's alive. It makes you move when it's time to act and rest when it's time to breathe. It's not about giving up, it's about waking up to your body, your breath, your intuition. So how do we begin? Start small. Notice when you're trying to control. Notice the tightness in your shoulders, the tension in your jaw, the spiral in your thoughts. Then pause, breathe, ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I let go just a little, and then let go just a little and see what happens? Maybe the world doesn't fall apart. Maybe something beautiful happens. Maybe you feel lighter, more open, more free. With time, you'll see letting go isn't the end, it's the beginning of a new relationship with life. One built not on fear, but on trust. One that says, whatever comes, I can meet it. Not with panic, but with presence. Not with resistance, but with grace. That's the invitation of the path, to stop clinging, to start trusting, to let life be life, and let yourself be free. Let's start with a simple question. Have you ever felt anxious, upset, or afraid without anything actually happening? Like you're just sitting there, nothing's gone wrong, but suddenly your chest tightens, your heart races, and your thoughts spiral into chaos. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. And here's the surprising truth. It's not the world creating that storm. It's your mind. Buddhism teaches that our emotions are often not responses to reality, but to our thoughts about reality. In other words, it's not what's happening. It's what we're telling ourselves about what's happening. Let's take an example. You send a message to someone important. An hour passes, no response. Then another hour, still nothing. Your mind begins, did I say something wrong? Are they mad at me? Maybe something terrible happened. Before you know it, you're anxious, restless, maybe even angry. But pause. What has actually happened? Nothing. No new event. No crisis. Just a thought. And yet, your entire emotional state has changed because of it. That's how powerful the mind is. It can hijack our emotional system based on imagination alone. This is why Buddhist wisdom teaches us to see thoughts as thoughts, not facts. Because when we don't, they grow into stories. And stories grow into feelings. And feelings can shape our entire experience, often without us even realizing. The problem isn't having thoughts. We all have them. The problem is identifying with them, believing every single one, following them down rabbit holes of fear, self-doubt, or frustration. It's like this. Your mind offers a script. You pick it up, rehearse the lines, and soon, you're starring in a drama you never meant to act in. But here's the thing. Thoughts are temporary. Emotions are waves, and you are the ocean. You are not every thought you think. You are the one who notices them. This is where mindfulness steps in, not just as a practice, but as a superpower. It allows you to pause and say, oh, nah, that's just a thought. That's just fear talking. That's just an old belief showing up. When you create this space between the thought and your reaction, you take back your power. Instead of reacting, you respond. Instead of being swept away, you stay grounded. The Buddha used a beautiful metaphor for this. He said, the untrained mind is like a burning forest. One spark ignites a blaze. But the trained mind is like a calm lake. When something falls in, there's only a ripple. We all have sparks. We all feel things deeply. But with practice, we learn how to hold those emotions without being consumed by them. So how do we do this? It starts with awareness. When you feel overwhelmed, pause. Ask yourself, what thought just passed through my mind? Was it a fear, a judgment, a memory, a what if? Then name it gently. Ah, that's fear of rejection. That's old perfectionism coming back. That's the part of me that wants control. By naming it, you separate it from yourself. And that's the first step to freedom. Because once you see a thought for what it is, you don't have to believe it. You don't have to follow it. You can simply breathe and let it pass, just like a cloud drifting across the sky. And here's something beautiful. When you practice this often enough, you start to notice patterns. You begin to see which thoughts always trigger anxiety, which stories your mind loves to replay. And you realize you have a choice. You can write a new story. You can respond from clarity instead of fear. You can choose peace over panic. Because ultimately, the mind is like a wild horse. It can run in all directions, dragging you with it. But with mindfulness, with compassion, with patience, you learn how to ride it. Not by force, but by understanding. Let me ask you this. How many moments of joy have you missed because of a thought you believed? How many mornings have been clouded by invisible worries? You deserve better than that. You deserve your own presence. You deserve the truth, not just the stories your mind creates. So the next time emotion rises and your mind starts spinning, pause, breathe, ask, is this really happening? Or am I thinking it into existence? That single moment of awareness, that space between thought and emotion, that is where transformation lives. That is where you live. Let me ask you something. What are you feeding your mind every day? Because just like the body becomes what we eat, the mind becomes what we consume. Every worry, every negative headline, every stressful conversation, every frantic scroll through social media, it all becomes fuel for the fire of anxiety. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're feeding it. We wake up, reach for the phone before we've taken our first breath. We check the news. We check the messages. We start the day already overstimulated, before we've even stepped out of bed. And then we wonder why we feel restless, tense, like something is always off. But here's the truth Buddhism gently reminds us. Peace is not something we stumble into. It's something we cultivate through the rhythm of our days. Imagine your life as a garden. Every thought, every habit, every piece of content, you're planting seeds. The question is, are you planting calm or chaos? Because anxiety doesn't come from nowhere. It builds quietly. One small trigger, one rushed meal, one overloaded schedule, one I'll rest later at a time. And before long, your nervous system is living in a constant state of emergency. So what's the antidote? We can't always control the world outside, but we can create a daily rhythm that gently pulls us back to center. A rhythm that nourishes the mind instead of overstimulating it. It begins with something simple, but powerful. Intentional pauses. Little moments built into your day that say, come back, breathe. You don't have to run right now. Here are a few ideas that can shift everything. Morning stillness before stimulation. Instead of reaching for your phone first thing, start with a breath. Sit by a window. Stretch. Let your system arrive before it starts reacting. Tech boundaries. Decide when you check email. Take breaks from scrolling, not because technology is bad, but because your mind needs space to breathe. Mindful transitions. Between tasks, take 30 seconds to reset. Stand up. Close your eyes. Touch your breath. It's not a break in productivity. It's fuel for presence. Evening rituals. Light a candle. Sip tea slowly. Put your phone away at least 30 minutes before sleep. Let your mind land softly into the night. And perhaps most important of all, say no more often. Not every opportunity is worth your peace. Not every request deserves a yes. Every time you say no to chaos, you say yes to calm. These are not grand changes. They're micro movements toward a different nervous system. A slower pace, a quieter rhythm, a more anchored presence. Because anxiety doesn't just feed on fear, it feeds on speed, on noise, on never stopping. But peace grows in slowness, in rhythm, in presence. This isn't about avoiding life. It's about moving through life in a way that doesn't constantly drain you. Let me ask you, have you ever gone through an entire day only to realize you barely remembered any of it? The meals you ate, the people you saw, the way the sun looked at 3 p.m. It's not that you didn't live that day. It's that your mind was too full to feel it, but it doesn't have to stay that way. You can build a rhythm that supports peace, one small choice at a time. You don't need to change everything overnight. Just begin. Maybe it's one mindful cup of coffee, one walk without your phone, one deep breath before a meeting, one quiet no when the world tries to rush you. Over time, these choices become your rhythm, and rhythm becomes lifestyle, and lifestyle becomes sanctuary. Because peace isn't just about what's missing. No chaos, no drama. It's about what's present. Clarity, presence, spaciousness. You. You don't have to earn peace. You just have to stop feeding what steals it. So the next time your heart races and your thoughts run wild, don't just ask, how do I stop feeling anxious? Ask instead, what have I been feeding my mind? What rhythm am I living in? What seed can I plant right now toward a gentler life? Because the truth is, you are the gardener. You are the rhythm keeper. And your peace is waiting to grow. Let's slow down for a moment. Close your eyes, if you're able. Take a breath in and exhale gently. Feel this moment, not as a concept, but as a real experience. The air around you, the weight of your body, the quiet rhythm of your breath. This is now. And now is where peace begins. Throughout this series, we have explored the roots of worry, how it forms, how it feeds on thought, on attachment, on fear. But as we reach the end of this path, one truth stands out with radiant clarity. Peace was never somewhere far away. It was always here, waiting beneath the noise, living quietly inside the present moment. Buddhism doesn't tell us to chase peace. It invites us to remember it, to return to it. And the doorway? It's always the same, presence. Let's be honest, we spend so much of our lives elsewhere. Our bodies go through the motions, but our minds are replaying yesterday's regrets or rehearsing tomorrow's what-ifs. It's like we're living in a constant tug of war, pulled between the past and the future, and yet missing the only place where life is actually happening, here. And what happens when we stay too long in those imagined worlds? Anxiety, overwhelm, exhaustion. Because the mind isn't designed to carry everything. It's designed to carry this breath, this step, this moment. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we resist what is, when we wish the now were different, when we argue with reality. But the moment we stop fighting, we soften, we settle, we begin to be. It's not about escaping hardship. It's about meeting life without armoring ourselves in worry. And presence isn't some grand, mystical state. It's deeply ordinary. It's tasting your food without distraction, hearing the sound of your child's laugh without rushing it away, feeling your own breath is a miracle, because it is. Presence doesn't demand that life be perfect. It simply asks that we show up for it, as we are, where we are, now, and when we do, something beautiful happens. The mind quiets, the heart steadies, the noise softens, and suddenly the moment feels full, not with achievement, but with aliveness. We begin to realize peace isn't the absence of problems. It's the presence of clarity, of stillness, of awareness. Let me ask you, when was the last time you really felt the moment? Not watched it, not passed through it, but lived it. That's where the healing is. Not in fixing the future, but in reclaiming this breath, this awareness, this moment. It's here that worry dissolves. Because worry needs a story to survive. And presence doesn't tell stories. It just is. The beauty of mindfulness is that it doesn't require hours. It requires attention. It doesn't ask you to change your life. It asks you to come back to it again and again. And each return is an act of courage. Each breath is a doorway. Each moment is a beginning. You may not always feel peaceful. That's okay. Presence isn't about perfection. It's about practice. You'll forget. You'll get swept away. We all do. But the gift is you can return at any time, in any place, with just a breath. So the next time you feel lost in thought, when the what-ifs come rushing in, when your mind builds a tower of fears, pause. Place your hand gently on your heart. Feel your body. Feel this breath. Say quietly to yourself, I'm here. And that's enough. Because in this very moment, you are not broken, you are not behind, you are not too late, you are simply alive. And that is everything. So if this series has spoken to something deep within you, a longing to live more fully, more softly, more present, then keep walking with us. Buddhist wisdom isn't just philosophy, it's a way of being, a return to self, a path back to peace. And that path, it begins here, with this breath, with this choice, with you.